Yeah.
Where are we?
Fairly.
Call East Cocalico Township Board meeting for July 16th order. Please rise and pledge allegiance to the American flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting was advertised in the newspaper back in December. We had an executive session on July 7th at 4:45 for personnel matters. No decisions were made at that meeting. Okay. Last meeting minutes. Any additions or corrections to those minutes as presented?
I do not have any.
I have none. Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
I'll second it.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you. Land plan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We'll start with the first item, Carriage Hill Phase 3 and 4, preliminary final subdivision plan. As the board may recall, a representative from Dave Miller Associates, in fact, John Long is here this evening, was at a prior meeting of the board on July 4th to discuss the project, some of the waivers that you took favorable action on. And at that meeting, there were two waivers that were being held until formal response came back from the DEP relative to the NPDS permit. One of the other various discussions was related to maintenance of stormwater facilities. So tonight, the update from that point to now is that they have obtained their NPDS permit from Lake County Conservation District and DEP. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of two remaining stormwater waivers, and that would be the first item that I recommend you for consideration. I can go into them individually. They're in the engineer's report. I can go over the first one if you'd like. The first one, the motion would be, and this is consistent with the recommendation from the Planning Commission, would be to approve a waiver modification of section 185.23 of the East Cocalico Township Stormwater Management Ordinance related to volume control requirements, and authorize the applicant to utilize the DEP-approved managed release concept as approved by DEP through the issuance of an NPDS permit.
Somebody,
There's also Dave Schrader from Landmark present.
okay, good, thank you. Okay, I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next would be a motion to approve a waiver modification of section 185.24D of the East Cocalico Township Stormwater Management Ordinance related to stormwater basin dewatering times, and authorize use of an extended dewatering times as approved by DEP through the issuance of the NPDS permit and as deemed acceptable to the township engineer.
Okay, looking for a motion.
And I'll make that motion.
Second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
The other update relative to the project since the June 4th meeting would be that an updated engineering review letter was issued based on a updated plan submission. That letter is the June 12th, 2020 letter, which I think you should have in your packet. If not, I have an extra copy here. And kind of picking up at where we left off at the last meeting, there were a few items that needed further discussion and determination from the board so that the applicant can confirm how to proceed. They are anxious to proceed at this point in light of obtaining the NPDS permit. There are a few administrative items outstanding, and I did receive an updated plan set earlier this evening as far as some very minor technical items. They need to establish financial security in addition to stormwater management agreement, an improvement guarantee agreement, and those type of items. But it goes back to a key item that was discussed last time, which is the method of long-term maintenance responsibilities for the stormwater conveyance and management facilities, which would be the private ones outside the right-of-way of the dedicated roadways. And as discussed at the last meeting, there were discussions, the current proposal by the applicant is to have private maintenance of the main basin and shared maintenance of any other facilities which would say straddle a property line or a property owner's responsibility for facilities that are on their lot. The other discussion was, is it appropriate that an association be developed to address it? So maybe Dave was not present the last time, maybe he wants to highlight Landmark's position and why. And like I said, ultimately, a decision on that is necessary in order to finalize the maintenance documents and the plan notes.
The stormwater management basin that is shown on the one lot would be maintained by the individual homeowner. They will be provided with maintenance requirements for the basin, and they will be made aware of that information prior to them purchasing the lot and building a home. It is mentioned about starting an HOA, which would be very difficult at this point, since this is the last phase of the development. We thought we did not want to burden 25 homeowners, even though the whole development makes use of the basin itself. That it would just be more advanced would be laid upon the one homeowner that owned the lot.
I think the townships run into issues with that idea in the past where properties get changed over the years and new people that purchase that one house or lot, all of a sudden there needs to be a basin upgrade in one way or the other, and they get surprised when they see large dollar figures on that. You know, the homeowners association seems like it's a better idea because it spreads that out over a large amount of homes and keeps those costs reasonable for everybody. Is there a reason that, other than what you stated, why that wouldn't be the preference here? Or?
Well, it's the fact that the whole development, not just this one phase, is going to benefit from using the basin. That's where all the stormwater goes. So to initiate that on existing homeowners right now would be rather difficult.
Yeah, well, that probably wouldn't be an option. It would just be all the new houses that are being put in there, wouldn't it?
Yes, but I don't believe that would be a fair burden for those homeowners that are new homeowners that are coming into the development.
Just to clarify, I think Dave may say 25 lots, and it's 35 in the current
Yeah.
phase, 32. So
Yeah.
There's what, how many homes in the old part?
I have to verify that. Similar.
20? 25?
Something like 37 or something like that.
Just about the same amount.
About half and half.
Did you get approval for individual home mailboxes?
We got a waiver for that. We're not going to do individual home mailboxes, we're going to be doing group reports. So we were able to get
Okay.
a waiver from the U.S. Postal Service, and they agreed to that, Postmasters agreed to that, so we have that approval.
So who takes care of the 4 mailboxes?
Just to clarify, it would be 4, I'll say traditional mailboxes, although the larger size,
One post.
on an individual post, each on an individual post.
Right.
So it'd be a shared post by 4 people?
No,
No.
no, no.
4 individual posts?
It's just taking everybody's mailbox like you would have a larger size because the new standard that they've been informed is a larger mailbox now, and sliding all those to groups of 4.
It's a cluster box.
So one homeowner is gonna be responsible.
It's not a traditional, it's not the standard trust,
I
a
understand
cluster
that.
box with the metal
Right.
enclosure and all that. It's just a mailbox, but instead of having individual stops, they'd stop one place, and there are several places along 272 where you see a bank of mail, individual mailboxes, groups, so you don't have to stop there. So I think
So, but
it's kind of a,
Still
Hybrid.
still falls on
it's
that
a
one.
hybrid, exactly. a hybrid.
But it's on one person's, front of one person's house, basically.
Right.
It would be, they would be the standard mailbox location in the.
Right away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it would be off of private property, but some of the other concerns when you have a cluster box would be what if it happens to the box itself, and the overall unit, the larger unit would not be allowed in the right of way, so it's a hybrid of what used to be the case.
Brent, refresh my memory from my notes and what I seem to remember. There were 7 adjacent lots there, right?
Yeah,
Actually,
we
where
could
this-
put the plan up if it's a benefit, but there are,
There were 7 adjacent lots
Yeah.
to the actual
so
basin itself.
to highlight the facility, right, there's the main basin currently shown on lot 11, and there is lot 12, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and a small portion of 4 that would abut portions of that area. There's a fence that is proposed on lots 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and that fence was shown in an easement on those lots, and the maintenance responsibility as currently outlined by the applicant is that that fence be maintained by the property owner on lot 11.
Right.
There was
So-
also a pipe coming in, straddling two lots,
Right.
30-inch diameter pipe.
Right, so I think what I remember also from our last conversation was there, when we looked at the overview of that design, there was actually an access pinch point there on one of the properties, wasn't there? If it was only one lot 11? Lot 11 that was responsible for the maintenance on the basin.
The way it was outlined by the applicant, they can highlight their intentions, but it was to provide an access way straddling the property line from lot 11 and 10, providing a 15-foot easement on lot 10, a 15-foot easement on lot 11, reserving a 30-foot corridor to come from the public roadway to the rear of the lots.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so there was easement on the 2 lots. Couple of questions for Landmark that I have. When there's a homeowner for that home responsible for the maintenance on that lot, do you give them projections of those costs of maintenance over periods of time, or do you just state?
No,
You have to
we just
maintain-
state their responsibilities in regards to maintenance.
Because those maintenance costs over time could be could be a significant portion of the value of that home itself. Have you considered, and why not just leave lot 11 as a bare lot and have that as a complete access point to that basin with some kind of homeowner association?
Well, obviously, when we're talking numbers, that makes it a little more challenging. If I could reference a plan that dates back to phase 1 in 2001, the plans were approved at that time through that board, to acknowledging that at that time, that one particular stormwater management basin will be encumbered on one lot.
A lot has changed in the last 20 years.
Yes. Mhm.
I'm just going on the record.
I understand.
20 years ago, we didn't have what we have today in regulations either. Because there are a bunch of, like Carriage Hill, there's a basin there that person owns, that it's responsible for updating. Where's the other one over here somewhere?
Rose Hills.
Rose Hill, there's one. That's within row. There's a problem.
Yeah.
It's gonna be significant cost to their homeowners.
You know, to your comment that, you know, they'll be handling water from, you know, all the previous homes that are there, well, you're putting that burden on that one homeowner for all the water for all these other homes that are already there too. So, I mean, it can go both ways. You know, I just look at that as, I think it just makes more sense to spread that out over a homeowners association. With the experience we've had in the township before, you know, next homeowner gets it, you might be real transparent to the first homeowner that's there, but then what about the next guy that
Well, we
buys
would
the
have
house?
to keep restrictions, and it'd be plainly, I already talked to our COO, and our officer generates these deeds and creates the record, and she's very specific in regards to what we're providing to our clients, and they're under the understanding exactly what's involved when they partake in ownership of stormwater management basin facilities. So then that follows, it just follows the deed, it doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
It doesn't get lost anywhere, it just continues on.
It does get lost.
No, it doesn't.
Transfer.
I would disagree.
Ken?
Yeah, I've seen multiple cases in this township where the first deed has a reference to stormwater maintenance on it. The second one, it goes away, and there's nothing on the deed at the next transfer. That's been fairly common.
You know, I think the sensitivity right now is just what DEP has done with us in terms of stormwater management, the Chesapeake Bay. I think there's a heightened sensitivity right now with many municipalities over stormwater, how it's managed, where it's going, who's contributing to that stormwater. And that's part of my concern right now. My other concern with it also is it's just the costs associated with maintaining these basins over a 10 or 20-year period. And the fencing, but more important for me, the bigger cost is really the maintenance of that basin. You have a major event where part of that gets washed out. I mean, there's some serious excavation that has to be done there, a lot of things that have to be done.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. That, to be very open with you, that's my hesitation right now with what I see with this. I think, Penny, you had mentioned before the planning commission was okay with it, or?
Well, the whole point came down to, do you want one angry person or 35 angry people? Because if you form a homeowners association, then those 35 are going to be angry that the first 35 are not contributing anything. So that's where you run into a mess there, you know. It just, no matter how you cut this, it's going to be a mess, you know. It truly is. And so the planning commission opted to go with one person. But my biggest fear is, just like it said, you know, the first one or two homeowners are going to be aware of that. But through deed transfers and title transfers, that language does get lost. It does get somehow removed from it. And then all of a sudden you have a buyer that has no idea. And there's just no way to make that stick. You know, I've asked several people, I've talked to the engineers, how do you make that stick onto a deed? And you can't guarantee that that's going to stick there and stay there, you know. Now the planning commission did think that the large pipe coming down between the two properties should be the responsibility of the township, because it is very large, 35-inch or something like that.
30 inches.
30-inch pipe, and they thought that would be too much to place on homeowners, and the planning commission recommended that the township take over that.
And was going to mention that, and thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
That the planning commission did mention that they were interested in taking on the cost from the street inlet down to the head wall.
Mhm.
Everything inside of that easement, which then would then ease up any of the other financial concerns that you would have for the individual homeowner. So that could be a consideration.
Well, I'd personally be okay with one person taking care of it if there was a guarantee that that would always be on the deed and that homeowner would always be aware before they bought the property. And there's just no guarantee for that.
Tony, maybe you could just take a minute and highlight some of the Rose Hill issue there, just.
The biggest issue with Rose Hill, a very large basin for a projected three-phase development. The first phase was done, the other two were eliminated because of a conservancy that the federal government came and bought the land. That house that we're talking about that has this basin on is the fourth owner that I know of on this property. The first one was obviously development's first built, 10, 15, 20 years, no problems with any of the facilities, they should last. But it's the second, third, fourth owners that may have to reap some of the so-called benefits of that maintenance on that particular outfall. And we have a problem there with the outfall. And it's a large basin, large outfall, big structure, a lot of concrete, pipe work. It adds up very quickly. And even just to maintain the bottom of this facility would have to be done per the engineer plan. So you just can't go in and start pulling stuff out. You have to make sure everything's surveyed, everything, proper elevations. And to get any engineering company in there is going to cost money. So these poor people that bought their retirement home are now faced with this reality.
Let me ask you a question that Tony and my fellow board members here, and Tony and Brent, what happens hypothetically if there's a homeowner there, the homeowner's bankrupt or whatever, the bank refuses it, and there's an event where the property must be maintained, it's starting to create inflow and outflow problems.
Well, it goes back
Does the
to the bank.
liability fall on us as the township then to take that over?
It goes back to the bank, it's the bank's responsibility.
Okay.
If it's financed.
If it's fine.
If it's fine.
Tony, you mentioned that the basin you just talked about, has the language remained in the deed since that's transferred 4 times?
All I can tell you is what the responses were from the last 2 owners. And the third owner was transferred for their business, their occupation. They sold the house to the corporation. The corporation subbed this house out to an agency that does this with homes, relocating people. Now the new folks who had it, the most recent owners, the 4th owners, nothing on a seller's disclosure, nothing on the title of the deed paperwork, nothing even mentioned. The only word of maintenance came in when they asked what is maintenance, and they said, well, you have to cut the grass around the top of the swale, top of the berm, and that's it. That's as far as the maintenance language went, but none of that was on any paperwork.
Yeah, I see it as a function of the board here to try and avoid these problems in the future. And by spreading out the risk over a lot of house homeowners, I think that
Yeah, I
gives a
think,
little more security that way.
I think it's fair to say our experience has been that these types of maintenance agreements end up slipping by the wayside when the homes are transferred multiple times. That's been our experience.
One other thing I will add for the record, I had multiple phone calls on that particular property before the latest owners purchased it. And everybody that asked me about the retention basin and what the responsibilities were, I told them exactly what I know. And that's probably why the property took over 1.5 years to sell. People have found out what the real meaning of maintenance was and decided not to jump in on that.
Did they have no agreement?
I'm not sure. I didn't see any of that documentation. This is only verbal, getting it from the current owner. And they were looking for legal recourse, asking advice on that, and I can't give that advice. But they felt that they were misled. So, who's responsible? The realtor, previous owner? I don't know. It's not really the township's position to get involved in
The attorney in closing, or
that. Yeah, who do you chase?
Well, what's the board feel?
I would like to see a homeowners association there. There's no good way going forward. As Penny said early on, you know, you got one person or you're gonna have multiple people, but it just makes sense to spread that out in my mind.
the other way that I look at it is personally myself, even for those homeowners there that may have to have the homeowner association added. It really is a benefit to them. It's a benefit to them that considering all these new DEP requirements and the way that water runoff, the way this is progressing and evolving, it's really to their best benefit also that they have stormwater facilities for all those homes that are properly maintained.
Okay.
Agree.
Doug?
Can I ask a question, just for clarification? Doug Mackley. A homeowners association would not be, is it formed right away? As I understand it, it's not. It's formed after a certain percentage of the total houses are sold. Is that the way this is set up? Do we know? And the reason I'm asking is, if there's no homeowners association and that piece of land would belong to the homeowners association, the people who are responsible for it in the meantime is a developer. That's the way it's always been. I just need to know if I'm right or wrong, that's all. Just a point of clarification. I'm not trying to stir the thing either way, but it used to be you had to sell 50% of the total houses or something like that before you could form a homeowners association. And then you have to elect a president, a vice president, and a secretary, and those people have to be members of that community, or again, it falls back on the guy the developer. That's the way it used to be.
Yeah, keep in mind that for the whole duration of the construction, until the entire site is stabilized, the owner, developer has the permit. So the developer is obligated to complete the facilities in accordance with the NPDES permit and township financial security. So that's the assurance that it gets built on. And any HOA document, that's kind of why we're at this point. If that's what's going to be asked for, the HOA documents are generated, reviewed by Tom Goodman, the township solicitor, and coordinate all those aspects, and then blend it with plan notes to make sure it's clear what is the association and what is the individual property owner. That goes right down to the point of swales and who mows the swale, who cleans the sediment out of the swale. It may be, those are the things that need to be clarified. And same with pipes that are straddling property lines, those would likely also be a responsibility of the association.
And is that document part of the recorded plan?
It would be referenced on the recorded plan that an HOA, and Tom, yeah, so
So the HOA document and bylaws,
are reviewed by Tom, and Tom would identify the appropriate timing for those.
so that almost has to be into us before the plan is recorded.
I think Tom would want to review those documents before they're recorded.
Yeah.
Saying that this has happened, in fact, there's some, I think multiple attorneys here, but Dwight Gover was one with Wabash as an association. And those documents were all.
I think that would be the smart way to have that before the plan's recorded.
Yeah,
Something to consider, what if Landmark were to decide to put X amount of money in escrow to be held by the township for the maintenance of the basin that could keep it from an HOA? It's been their intent from the beginning, they've stated that, they've talked about that. Is that something that you guys would consider that would help ease, put it in an escrow account?
But when's enough? What's the right amount? You know, the house will be there a long, long time, I guess is the intent.
So the basin's been there 20 years, it doesn't look like anything's been done to it by the prior owners. It's held up through this time, so my guess is in 20 years, that money would grow, township would have accessible. And I'm not saying this is what Landmark wants to do, I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there as something to consider, knowing Landmark position on how they would like to proceed, that's all.
I think we would almost have to get some kind of figure from our engineer of what a complete retrofit would cost 20 years down the road.
But complete retrofit.
Well, whatever it's gonna
Yeah.
take, you know.
Yeah.
That's a can
Yeah, the other option is, but I don't know if this has been done, the other option is there's a lot of specialty carriers out there, insurance carriers, very specialized insurance carriers. Is there a carrier out there that would do something like your state? Where it has, in the policy itself, clearly who the insured is, who the additional insureds are.
I haven't seen
But that's gonna be some pretty special, you're talking Excel, you're talking Lloyd's of London, you're talking some pretty specialized carriers.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think the board should make a motion if they have a decision.
You wanna make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we are requiring a homeowners association for this phase of the Carriage Hill development,
Or some sort of homeowner association.
some sort, for the stormwater.
With the intent of specifically,
maintenance of the storm.
specifically handling the maintenance of that basin
And it's fence.
and the fence. Thank you.
So
I would caution you there on just those, that there are some other places where there's piping between lawns and
Right.
yards, and the association is formed to address
All of it.
85%, it would seem to make sense that
Well, they may address the other points. We just
all
want to
the
make sure.
stormwater, I would say all
All
stormwater
All the
to the
stormwater
satisfaction of
facilities.
the township, yeah, relative,
What about the big pipe?
well, that would be part of the conveyances on private property. It would be regarding the maintenance of stormwater management facilities on private property.
You got that motion? Penny?
Yes, Brett will help you with that.
You made
We
it?
have it just a minute.
And I will second that.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, motion carried, thank
Okay,
you.
1 second. So, Mr. Mitchell, that was the motion and you second, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
The other items, and in light of that, the other item that you'll needs to be resolved at some point is this agreement relative to access, construction access, temporary construction access, and once again, this is all based upon trying to prevent damage to adjacent township roads as a result of construction. I've experienced this elsewhere and approved action. So the terms of that agreement need to be worked out between the developer and the township, but it has not been developed at this point. I don't know if there's any comments, Dave, you want to make relative to that, or? Yeah, there's been some emails exchanged and indicated that Landmark should draft up their version of the agreement for review by the township. But essentially, it will restrict construction access to the temporary road to Bridge Avenue in lieu of coming through the prior phases of Carriage Hill. And as previously discussed, it would address the stub street of Lee Drive where the temporary cul-de-sac would be removed, and how do you deal with temporary maintenance of that area, plowing, et cetera, for the years during the construction process. So that can all be, if the board has ideas relative to that, I guess express them to Penny so she can pass them along to Tom, and try to reduce the amount of time to finalize an agreement. And finally, I think we discussed proposed streetlight spacing. I think a handout was provided to you.
There's no, what is it, REIN road? The one on the left.
Yes, right.
There's no light in there.
No, we had discussed that earlier with them, that if they maintain a spacing generally consistent with the prior plan, there would at least be one there.
Yeah.
All the yellows are existing within the prior phases, and
Mhm.
this discussion came since there was a philosophy on newer developments to try to reduce street lighting and kind of scale back street lighting, as was done in Heatherwood and some of the more recent ones. Here was the case, we just wanted to demonstrate what's out there today in yellow and what they're proposing, and in general, it's about every other lot on it, it's one side of the road.
There's none in,
Right.
there should be one in that, those two, in my
Whether,
opinion.
whether there's some ways they could do that, maybe shift one to the corner of 21, from 9 or 10, shift that to 21, and then maybe move the other one somewhere between 15 and 14, or 23 and 22,
Mhm.
and the one between 11 and 12 maybe could be addressed in the future if it ever moves, if the development extends that way, so.
Okay.
We'll coordinate with them, just wanted to make sure the board's not saying eliminate half of the additional street
No.
lighting and I just don't know.
No, I didn't think so.
I think that's all I had to discuss. I don't know if they also need to provide the township calculation for the park and rec, the fee in lieu of land dedication, an appraisal, so that's another item that's in works.
Mhm.
Is there anything?
Joe said he's working on that currently.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. If they didn't have anything else, I think my recommendation was to table it until some of those items get finalized, the financial security amount gets confirmed. So some of the motions you deal with in the future would be authorizing signature of the financial security with a stated amount that you would approve, and then authorizing signature of the various legal documents, plan notes, etc.
Thank you.
I would table the plan if that's your.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You need a motion for that?
I should probably,
Table then?
yeah.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next item is Wabash Landing, final subdivision land development, and that has a deadline of actually July 24th. They have provided a time extension. So the suggested motion would be a motion to accept the time extension offer as submitted by the applicant's consultant dated July 2nd, 2020, which will extend the deadline for action on the Wabash Landing Phase 2 final subdivision land development plan until October 23rd, 2020.
Is anybody here representing that?
Dwight is here if you have to say anything, but
I can try and answer any questions if you have any. They're actively working on phase 2, and it's in their interest to keep it moving, so nobody wants to delay.
yeah, and maybe as an update, they, in response to the previous action from the board on the mitigation, identified the traffic impact study to PennDOT. PennDOT approved that and has authorized, I guess I'd say conditionally approved that, and has authorized them to submit their PennDOT highway occupancy permits for the access on the Stevens Road, which is a vital aspect of the remaining phases,
Mhm.
and probably one of the most concerning items relative to trying to get things moving. The certainty with respect to that is vital.
Okay.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next item, under other agenda items, as far as stormwater plans, et cetera, or cleanups on prior land developments, would be the Rupert Stormwater Management Plan. There was a concept submitted. Veronica Doobie from Pure Associates is present, and I think the applicant is, I think, also present. This goes back to property on 16.7 acre property, 956 Smokestown Road, has an existing dwelling on the property, looking to remove some of the dwellings and outbuildings, reconstruct a new home with accessory structures and other features. As a result, there's a net increase in impervious area of around 21,000 square feet, 20,500 maybe. The activity will require a DEP NPDES permit based on the disturbance of more than an acre. Typical process would be the submission of a stormwater management plan, review through the township, and then an NPDES permit submission to the Conservation District and DEP. Veronica, I'll let Veronica speak and fill in some of the gaps, but they had proposed as a possible approach to solve their NPDES permitting responsibility to provide a riparian buffer along a portion of the stream. The Cocalico Creek traverses the property, and just for general reference, it'd be kind of down in the ballpark of a fire company, Smokestown Fire Company, kind of around the bend from there. The property straddles both sides of Smokestown Road and is adjacent to Martin Road. And some of the improvements are on the portion, on both portions of the property. So in their preliminary discussions with the DEP, they were considering, and are considering, pursuing a riparian buffer to attempt to satisfy all the NPDES requirements as to be 100 foot wide along the stream, along portions of the stream that aren't impacted by an existing overhead electric line. So it'd be the north side of the stream and running from, the stream runs from east to west, so it'd be north side of the stream and extends from the eastern property line to the vicinity of the edge of the 150-foot overhead electric easement. And DEP has more or less indicated that a riparian buffer is kind of a non-discharge alternative that would satisfy the NPDES requirements, considering certain conditions, sheet flow distributed into the area, meeting all the planting requirements, etc. And the reason they're here tonight is we felt, and Tony and I discussed this project, that this is such a unique aspect here, and that no structural stormwater measures are being proposed. No basin, no infiltration trench, no rain garden. And all the reliance is on, from their concept, is on the riparian buffer addressing the flow of this stormwater, peak rate, volume, and any water quality aspects from the proposed project. So maybe that's a point, maybe just to stop and turn it over and let Veronica maybe fill in some of those blanks and further highlight why they want to pursue this. But we feel this is such a unique approach with no structural measure that it would require and should require consideration by the board. It kind of sets a unique, I guess, new approach. I think generally speaking, the township is favorable upon riparian buffers, understands that they have benefits. I think we also understand there are certain areas those benefits are maybe more substantial than others. And other things to consider is how can these areas be established? Because part of their request and part of the, I won't say manipulation of the numbers, but essentially to try to make the peak flow numbers work and say that it's a viable approach, you're basically saying it's a forested area immediately. And by changing a grass cover condition to a forested condition and then changing a grass to an impervious, you try to work the numbers so they indicate no net increase. But
it's going to take years before it gets to that point.
I'll let Veronica take it.
So I wanted to state that everything Brent said is correct so far. Some of the numbers, parts of it is roughly 21,000, which is equivalent to about 0.47 acres of new impervious. But we are adding 1.58 acres of forest. it's like 3 times what the amount of impervious area is that we are adding. So it's an extremely large area. This doesn't come up very often because a lot of times, number one, you don't have the drainage area that's impervious draining to the riparian buffer, which is a requirement for this to work. And also that a lot of times you don't have this much space, you know, and a client that's willing to do this long-term, environmentally friendly, future stormwater management approach. DEP has been promoting riparian buffers since I probably began my career, and this is the first time that I've been able to actually promote it in a way that they've been telling me to promote it. So, in my opinion, I think it's something that they've been pushing for, but it only applies in certain cases, and this is one case that I think we can absolutely use this approach. It is an alternative design. It's not our standard way that we do stormwater. However, DEP, I even contacted DEP to make sure that I'm following the correct methodology. Brent's seen that email, and I have a copy if you want to see it. But that's essentially what Brent said is this is a future forest. That is the main question. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything.
So how is the water going to be controlled until it reaches that point where it is a forest?
So essentially, it won't be controlled. It will sheet flow through until it gets to the forest, and in a few years, when the forest grows, then it will provide that control. All of the area where this forest is now is currently in the floodplain, so it will also provide a benefit for the floodplain in this area. I think it is a long-term benefit to the stream, which is what DEP is promoting also. So that's my 2 cents on it.
What would your thoughts be about getting it established, some of the details of that?
DEP has requirements, and I think the township also has requirements, so I'll be following both of those in order to get it established. It is a long-term process. They have to come back in if trees are, die the first year, then they have to come back and replant them, depending on the requirement and how many trees are planted. We haven't gotten into all the details of that because if this isn't approved, then I have to relook at everything. So I don't want to go that far into the detail of the actual plantings yet.
I think we discussed too, not just planting, little saplings, but larger trees, try to get it established quicker. It might cost a little more upfront, but we can maybe get to the end result a little quicker that way.
Yeah, so we could do a combination also, which might be good, kind of in between, working with the township with that, I think.
I've been familiar myself with some of the establishment and riparian buffers, and a lot of times they use small saplings, and my experience is you get a major storm and they're all gone. And they're really not providing any help early on until they would get established and get size to them, and it could be 10, 20 years down the road. And throughout that period, we're really getting no benefit from them for stormwater control. I think it would be highly important to get an equal distributed flow into the area and not have targeted inflow areas to it. We have the benefit here of having Ken McRae, of our MS4 specialist, and I was just curious what your thoughts are on this kind of idea. What points do you see as being important here, Ken?
Well, before it's going to start working, it's going to need to be more than just saplings, obviously. The one consideration that came to mind is if you're putting this riparian buffer into a floodplain, under flood conditions, it's not going to do anything because it's already covered with water, and simply the additional runoff will just go in and add to the flood. You're not detaining it, you're not storing it, it simply goes in without any control, if that area is already flooded.
In your mind, Brent, is there any way to, have temporary controls until something like this would be established down the road, or is that just kind of a pipe dream, I guess?
No, I think there's probably ways to do it, or have a hybrid where you give some value to the buffer, but then require something supplemental, some type. And we've had different discussions on this. So you've got retenant berms along there with the routines, sort of like a terrace, similar to an ag terrace, but not to that extreme. The manual has not endless, but various options in terms of facilities that could try to offset the flow. The one other thing that's unique here, and that's why I said, I think so much of it relies on which property it is, the characteristics of the property, such as things, the flow depth, and we've discussed that. I think some of the flow depths in here with the 100-year flood would be as deep as 5 feet, which would impact trees in some way. The drainage pattern also does not go from the improved area straight to the stream through the floodplain. It meanders westward and goes on to the adjacent property before coming to the stream. That's an interesting twist too, I think, in terms of, in an ideal setting, you have control of that water going to the stream. You have some higher lands, maybe to deal with things that weren't automatically saturated from the flood condition, other aspects. So the reason they're here is because it's a tough call. There's value. I think we all know there's value to repairing buffers. But I think the other part is that trying to explain what happens day one and how 20,000 square feet of impervious area, are addressed and do not leave at a higher rate or do not leave at a higher volume on a 2-year storm. It's interesting. DEP bought in on certain aspects of that. They have asked her to confirm rate, and I don't know exactly if they looked at all the coefficients and all the details of how she presented it to them, but essentially they said if you can show that the rate works based on the swapping, there's values in our ordinance, there's different values in some other books, the Soil Conservation Service manual, which DEP refers to. So you can kind of use different figures to point out different things to support your cause or to undermine your cause. So I think the bigger question here is trying to get a sense on the level of support the board has.
One more question. I think Ken made a very valid point here. This portion of the riparian buffer, is it mostly in the floodplain, all in the floodplain?
I think it's all.
It's all in the
All in the
floodplain.
floodplain.
Well, yeah.
It's not all 5 feet though. I mean,
No. And that's a 100-year storm, but it's in the floodplain.
Yeah, we've been getting many of those in the last several years. But what good does it do when it's in a flood? It's not solving any of the problems from the property we're talking about.
Well, I think it actually establishes the stream bank. It continues to slow the flow down coming directly. The drainage area coming towards it slows that flow down as it comes into the forest because there's so much debris on the ground and just so much brush and things that has to go around. Also, all of the, I mean, you've been under a tree before, a lot of rain goes onto the leaves. It doesn't actually get to the ground. So there are benefits, even in the 2-year storm, to large trees. The question is 20 years from now versus now. And that changes, that's the big question right now.
I think it's an interesting idea. The question is how do we solve the problem over the first 10, 20 years to accumulate the control that's necessary.
Yeah, for me, it's very interesting that DEP would look at that as basically a swap for the NPDES permits.
Well, we still have to do the MPS permit, and it's considered a small project. And we will go through the MPS same requirements. But because it's so small, because I think it'll be like 1.5 acres of disturbance, they don't consider any of the planting area to be disturbed. I confirmed that with them. Because you're not digging large areas out, you're just planting small, the trees. So
It is a very unique approach.
it is extremely unique, and it does not apply very often. I've tried to look at this in other projects. Like I said, I've been working for 19 years, and this is the first project that's even come close to even making these numbers work.
Because
So,
the parameters they've set, you've got to meet those parameters.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I'd be receptive to the idea, but that, it brings up another question. Can you, until you provide all the temporary, so to speak, stormwater reduction there, you'd be maybe creating some terraces, some swales, and until you do all that land contouring, are you really, is it really benefiting you over a complete conventional stormwater system?
Well, I would say that by doing that, sometimes you create channeling, which is the opposite of what they're looking for riparian buffer. They want it to sheet flow
Yeah.
into the site, into the riparian buffer. So it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
So you're looking for from us then really a sense of, are we open to the idea?
Yes.
So you can start looking at some of those rate flows that Fred mentioned and.
I've looked at the rate flows. I think the question is, the plantings, we haven't gone over that and the details of all the plantings and specifics of that.
Yeah, I would just say, I haven't gone down to the nth degree to try to buy into every one of her numbers. The initial reaction is, this is very unique. If there's not support for this, there's no reason to argue over certain numbers. So that was the first aspect. I also highlighted that issue that when it leaves, it goes on to an adjacent property. And the ordinance has provisions that you're not allowed to alter or, change drainage patterns or volume onto adjacent property. So that aspect was a little bit interesting too, whether it's in the channel or not in the channel, and how do you deal with that? I don't know the communication with adjacent properties. Sometimes you have a party that says, hey, I'm all for it, I'd love to see it. And another thing that hasn't been mentioned is when you forest that area, if you truly get a forested area, there is some concern, does it alter the elevation of the flood entering that area? And there is a dwelling located immediately northeast of there that has the floodplain winding very close to the house, and precise elevations would have to be determined. So if you were doing a flood study and the overbank out of the stream channel conditions was a forested area, you would use different values as far as like roughness coefficients of that area or the effectiveness of that area. And so some of the discussion would, if you push that area, started a little later and finish it longer to the west, trying to minimize potential for impacts and show that you're not creating a situation. And as we know, an inch with a floodplain or altering a flow condition can mean a lot. Can mean nothing or it can mean a world.
Yep.
Well, I'll also state that it's the township's requirement to have a riparian buffer there. And we're adding a little bit extra to that. So that being, this also came from East Cocalico Township's ordinance of the requirement of the buffer. We're just trying to use it in a little bit more of an advanced way. And also mention that on the opposite side of the stream, there is a forest, and it is established and doing fine, and the soils are very similar. So in stating that, some people say, well, we don't know if a forest will grow there. Well, I can say right on the other side of the stream, there is a forest there, so that's proof that it can grow there.
I'll say my opinion first, and